Right. So you're working for your organization, but you don't know how to sustain some kind of competitive advantage. And everything is moving so fast that you don't know what's the right strategy or the right theory. And your colleagues, your co-workers, your managers, they might have different ideas. So what are you going to do about it? Well, if this is one of your issues, you're here in the right place, because today we're going to have a fantastic business strategy masterclass. Now, it's only going to last 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to shoot off rapid fire theories. That's not too easy to say. All about strategic management. We're going to look at different concepts from across the globe. We're going to look at some of the lessons that I learned in my MBA and lessons that you'll learn if you also take an MBA. We're just going to skim read those. And if you'd like to explore those kind of issues in deeper detail, and that's something that you can go off and research yourself, or go to Edology.com and have a look at some of our postgraduate degrees. We'll be able to learn this as well. So thank you very much for coming. Without any further ado, let's look at what we're going to discuss today. Just a bit of a background. My name is Joseph O'Brien. I completed my MBA last year 100% online. It taught me a lot about strategy. I did a module called The Organization in Strategic Context. And in that module, I learned a lot of the theories that you can see here on the slide. So we're going to talk about SMT, so Strategic Management Theory. That's why we're all here today. We're going to look at sense and meaning making by the great theorist Carl Weick. The Boston Consulting Group, which is an organization that's still thriving today, that's had a big hand in strategic management theory. Some of you may be familiar with KPIs, of course, targets, and we're going to have a little look at that balanced scorecard and why that's so relevant today. You can't go through an MBA without tackling Porter's 5 forces for studying your environment and understanding your competition. And you also can't do an MBA without doing a SWOT analysis or two. So we're going to have a look at that too. We're going to finish up with motivation, what motivates employees, and that's obviously should be part of any large organization strategy. Sustainable competitive advantage, whether a company can actually stay ahead of its competitors for a length of time. We're going to look at first movers, second movers, and something that's called blue ocean strategy. And we're going to finish up with some strategies that are on trend right now and look about the ecosystem that we're going to look to create when we take all the theories that we need in order to develop a cohesive plan for success for our organizations. So without any further ado, let's go through these theories and have a look. Strategic management theory. Now, strategic management theory is kind of an all-encompassing term that includes all these kind of subcategories and theories. Organizations need to have a strategic management theory, and they'll develop that over time whilst looking at new models that are coming into line. So the definition of strategic management, well, it's the continuous planning, the monitoring, analysis, and assessment of all that is necessary for an organization to meet its goals. Now, we're talking about the pattern or the mode of strategic management, and different strategic models are chosen by various companies according to their conveniences. And this is something that we'd like you to get out of the session today. Have a look at some of the theories that I'm discussing today and think about how you would place those theories within your organization. It's not all size fits. So, I mean, you'll have to look at certain theories that might help you and certain ones that might actually not be advantageous to your organization. And it's your ability to pick and choose that will define your ability to compete and succeed. Sense and meaning making. Now, one of the most profound theorists that I learned about while I was studying for my online MBA was the theorist called Carl Weick. Carl Weick developed this concept called sense making in this fantastic book that you can see on the slide here, Sense Making in Organizations. If you're looking for a way to start really getting your teeth into theory on a deeper level, I would say that this is the book to read. Now, as you see here, sense making is the process by which people give meaning to their collective experiences. It's formally defined as the ongoing retrospective development of plausible images that rationalize what people are doing. So now that does sound quite high-end and quite conceptual, but the way it was taught to me is all about framing. So an organization has to kind of look at a problem within the same frame. Now, we might all disagree the reason for that problem. We might all not agree on the solution and the way forward, but we can certainly agree on the framing of those issues and the way we all make sense of those issues. Now, the reason it's called sense and meaning making is you make sense of something by framing it, putting it in context, and allowing everyone to see the same frame and to come to an agreement. Only upon that point can you actually start moving on to meaning making, where you're actually putting practices on the ground based on the perception of what you're seeing in front of you. Now, it does sound very high-minded. There's a lot of theory about it, but it is one of the predominant management theories. How do I make sense of what is going on in my organization? Does this sense, is it the same sense that I'm making? Is that the same as my colleagues? Does he or she have the same perception of the issues that we have? Do they have the same perception of the solutions that we have? Now, obviously, by unifying and having a collective sense of what that issue is, in a collective frame, we're able to actually work better as an organization, and we're able to solve our problems quicker. And that kind of speed to outcome and speed to solution is really helpful if we're all on the same page, and sense making is just all about that. Does this make sense to you? Yes, this makes sense to me. Why does this make sense? Well, this is why it makes sense. Okay, I can see that. Okay, now that we've agreed that, how do we move on? It sounds very simple. There's a lot behind that. Sense and meaning making. Definitely one of my favorites here. Now, the Boston Consulting Group are a very influential company coming around, I believe, from the 1940s that have had a real heavy influence on strategic management theory, especially some model that they designed called the Boston Matrix. Some of you might know this: your problem childs, your stars, your cash cows, and your dogs. Now, the Boston Matrix, it's a well-known tool for the marketing manager. It was developed by this large US consulting group and is an approach to product portfolio planning. So what does that mean? Well, you might be an organization that has, let's say, 4 products. Let's say you're a burger restaurant and you have a burger, you have a chicken wrap, you have milkshake, and you have maybe salad. Okay. Now, the burger is probably your star. The salad is probably your dog, because not many people have that. It's a problem. You might have a problem with the wraps. It might be your problem child. What kind of wraps do people like? But your cash cow will be the burger, obviously. And your rising star might be that milkshake that's coming in loads of different flavors. Now, obviously, if you're a burger restaurant, burgers will be your cash cow, and you've got to concentrate on that. Your cash cow will develop, as you can see here, a high market share, but it might lead to low market growth, because other companies, as you'll see later when we talk about first and second mover advantage, will have realized that there's a cash cow out there, a product that consumers want to consume, and they would have gone and replicated that product. So although it's successful, although you might be one of the first organizations to offer that product, or you might offer the best version of that product, that cash cow might have relatively low market growth, as opposed to something that's up and coming through. Let's look at Starbucks, for example. The pumpkin spice latte. It's only available in October, November, December, I believe, but people are still campaigning to have it all year round. It's a star. It has high market growth. It has high relative market share, because when you say pumpkin spice latte, you think of Starbucks. However, the pumpkin spice latte isn't the cash cow for Starbucks. It'll be their standard coffee, their Americano or their espresso will be higher sellers, but there'll be lower market growth for those products, as there will be other competitive coffee places that will be selling similar products. However, the pumpkin spice latte, for example, for Starbucks, that would be seen as their star. Now, sometimes these change. Your stars can become your problem child. People might get tired of that drink. It might really start to undersell. You might have spent a lot of money promoting that product, but it's not really selling on the market, and sales are dwindling. What are you going to do when your strategy was set on this one product and putting all your marketing resources behind it? Well, that's where this matrix comes in, where you can kind of look at your portfolio of products and constantly audit and assess what your star is, what your cash cow is, what your problem child is, the product that's always causing you issues, and what your dog is, which is essentially a horrible term, really, to describe something that really isn't working, isn't giving you much market share, but is relatively relatively complex and difficult for you to get out there and to sell to consumers. So that's the Boston Matrix. It's very useful for sales businesses, especially where you have product portfolios. Most companies will have several products. The balanced scorecard. Now, the balanced scorecard is something that virtually every organization is using in some type of form today. We all talk about KPIs, we all talk about targets. Well, targets and KPIs have come primarily really from balanced scorecards. So what is the balanced scorecard? We've got a lovely example here. It's a way of looking holistically at an organization in 5 sections: the financial, the customer or consumer, the internal process of that company, and how that company learns and grows. And that's all should be tied into centrally the vision and strategy for that company. So your vision and strategy should encompass these 4 elements: financial, customer, learning and growth, and internal business processes. So this is a fantastic example here of something that you could use for your organization. To succeed financially, how should we appear to our shareholders? To satisfy our shareholders and customers, what business processes must we excel at? To achieve our vision, how we sustain our ability to change and improve. And for our customers, to achieve our vision, how should we appear to our customers? How would we like to put ourselves forward? And this is something that you can measure across all sections. You can look at what you're doing financially, you can develop metrics there. You can look at how your internal processes are, whether they're streamlined, whether you've got the appropriate amount of headcount for the work that you need in terms of capacity and resources. You can look at your training and development, your HR, and whether employees are given an opportunity to thrive, to grow, and to learn the skills they need to be competitive in their position. And you have to be customer centric. I mean, customer is still number one, in my opinion. And an organization really has to put the consumer and customer first, as the customer is the one that keeps them alive and keeps them in business. The 5 forces and SWOT. You can't get through an MBA, online or otherwise, without looking at Porter's 5 forces and SWOT analysis. So let's have a look at Porter's 5 forces. Now, when we look at this model, we run this model so that we can perform an environmental analysis. So what's an environmental analysis? Well, it's looking at our organization in relation to its environment and whether it will thrive, succeed, or whether it will fail in that environment. In order to understand that, you must have a look at the products your company is selling, about your ability to bargain with your suppliers, about your ability, the bargaining ability of your customers or your buyers. And you've got to look at new entrants coming into the market, new companies or new products coming into the market. And you look at that under the lens of the intensity of rivalry within the industry. So if we're looking at Facebook, for instance, I mean, how many times does Facebook have to perform this model? Is there a substitute Facebook? Not really, not now. Do we, as Facebook users, the billions of us, have bargaining power of buyers? I would say our power is pretty low. The bargaining brand power of the suppliers that they have to supply Facebook, well, that's pretty low as well for them. So they're able really to have all the bargaining power. Where they run the platform, people want to come to the platform, suppliers and advertisers want to come to the platform, customers want to come to the platform. So they have the bargaining power. There's no threat of substitute products. No one else is really running a Facebook out there, the same equivalency. And there's no real threat of new entrants in the market at the moment. You could consider Facebook almost a too big to fail company. They're so large that it would be nigh on impossible to compete. If we look to China, where Facebook is banned, we can see other social network and media platforms that do exist in this world where there are competitors and they have different bargaining power, and there's new entrants and there's new types of platforms coming in all the time. But generally across 60-70% of the globe, you'd say Facebook is someone who doesn't have to worry about Porter's 5 forces. But that's a luxury only massive companies can take. And the majority of organizations need to look around them. What other products are there? Is there a new supplier on the market? What are their power? Do we need their products? Especially if we look at manufacturing and buying. Let's say we're a car company. What is the bargaining power of the suppliers that give me the metal for the cars or the lights? What is the bargaining power of them because I have to keep my costs low? What is the bargaining power of my customers to go and use an alternative product and drive someone else's car? What about the threat of substitute products? What if people don't want to drive their own cars anymore? What if they'd rather take a bicycle? What if they'd rather fly? And the threat of new entrants, what other car companies are coming into the market? What kind of innovation are they bringing that's going to bring me down? Now, if you look at that under the lens of the rivalry that's in the industry already, what other car companies are out there right now doing this, then you'll have a pretty good idea where you stand. And so all decent organizations really will perform some kind of 5-force analysis, whether it's through their marketing, their sales, or all of the above, in order to kind of better understand where they sit in their environment. SWOT analysis. By the end of your MBA, you'll probably be quite sick of the SWOT analysis because you have to do it quite a lot, but it really does keep you sharp. A lot of you might know or be familiar with this model. It's a study undertaken by an organization to identify its internal strengths and weaknesses, as well as its external opportunities and threats. So we have here helpful to achieving the objective, strengths and opportunities, harmful to achieving the objective, weaknesses and threats, internal origin, attributes of the organization that we have, and external origin, attributes of the environment. So we can take any company again. We can look at any organization and say, well, what are our core strengths? What does this organization provide? Is it the company culture? Is it the product we sell? Is it the brand reputation going for time? What are our strengths? Opportunities. Well, we're a well-known organization. We have the following strengths. What can we capitalize on considering that position that we have? Harmful. Well, yes, we're a strong organization, but you're only as strong as the weakest link in a chain. What is that weakest link, and how could it bring our organization down or lead our consumers to go elsewhere? And threats, like we looked at before with Porter's 5 forces model, what kind of threats are out there that might kind of usurp our own business model, might create a different area in the market that might lead us to collapse? That's the SWOT analysis. Now, you can't really do strategic management theory without looking heavily at what motivates people and what motivates employees. Now, the most famous concept for employee motivation is really Hertzberg's 2-factor theory. The 2 factors here, as you can see on the slide, are intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Now, it used to be considered that it was your extrinsic motivation that would keep you at the company, and that would keep you working hard and motivated to do a good job. And by extrinsic, we mean hygiene factors, what Hertzberg called hygiene factors, which are how is my office environment, is my remuneration or pay suitable, are my working hours and conditions suitable? So those are extrinsic factors, and they're very, very important. They do provide what we can call a short-term high. So if you've got that right, then you're generally happy. But considering you have a settled salary, you've got a settled place of work, and you're happy with your work conditions and contract, well, 2-3 years or whatever, it's not going to change very much. What might change, and what will change, and what should change, is your intrinsic motivation, and that's the enjoyment that you take from doing your task, the enjoyment that you have from communicating with your colleagues, and that's a longer high. It's more sustainable to be intrinsically motivated. This is what Hertzberg found out. Now he states that there are certain factors in the workplace that cause job satisfaction, while a separate set of factors cause dissatisfaction. And it was developed by the theorist Frederick Hertzberg, who theorized that job satisfaction and job dissatisfaction act independently of each other. So let's look at the example I was giving earlier. Okay, I might not be quite happy with my remuneration of the money I'm getting at the moment. The commute to work might be a bit long, and those factors, those extrinsic factors, might bring me down a bit, might demotivate me a bit. However, if there is an exciting task, I'm working with an exciting team, and I feel rewarded, and I feel that my hard work goes noticed, and I feel appreciated, then those first set of factors, they might be considered independent. I might not be as worried about my hygiene, so to speak, when I'm enjoying my work so much. And that's why good companies really concentrate very hard on intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is something that most companies should always get right. You should be paid the proper amount. You should be working in a decent working space. You shouldn't have to commute for hours and hours on end. and then you'll be generally happy. You'll have a base level of happiness. But really good organizations, and you can see all the new ones, especially the Silicon Valley companies, the tech companies, look how much effort they put into keeping people intrinsically motivated. There's a ping pong table there, so you can take a break from your computer and just play a game, or go to the smoothie fridge and just have a drink, and it's all this kind of warm, happy community feeling that really keeps you motivated. And we can look later at communities, Mintzberg communities as companies as communities, sorry, where a company can have an attitude of being like a community, and it's seen that if a company is set up like a community to have strong communal attributes, that employees will be more motivated and will perform on a higher level. Sustainable competitive advantage. This is a theory, but in reality, it doesn't truly exist. Now, you could say that, there are a couple of examples that we mentioned earlier: your Googles, your Facebooks, your Apples. These massive companies called the FANGs. There's only 4 or 5 of them in the world at the moment. They might get to 6, 7, 8 of these type of mega companies worth trillions of dollars in market value, and it won't be many companies that will be able just to enter the market and compete with those. So you could say that many of those companies do have a sustainable competitive advantage. You can't see how we're going to beat them as a new entrant to the market in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. And as we try and move forward, those companies will also accelerate and grow with a lot more talent and a lot more money behind them. However, for the majority of companies, sustainable competitive advantage is a fallacy. It doesn't exist. We can only really hope on transient advantage, which is picking up on pockets of advantage where we ride the wave of something happening. Either it's our power in the market as a company, less power from the consumer, the demand of a certain product over a certain period, an advantageous situation with the supplier, being able to get a product or a supply for a cheaper amount. But normally those things do not last forever. Now, competitive advantage, it's this attribute that allows an organization to outperform its competitors. A competitive advantage may include, for example, access to a natural resource that someone else doesn't have, a low-cost power source, a highly skilled labor force. It might be where you're based geographically might give you an advantage. It might be that your industry has super high barriers for new entry, and so it's easier for you to sustain your competitive advantage because you've gone through the whole process to establish yourself on the market. One of my favorite quotes here by Barney is: a firm is said to have a competitive advantage when it is implementing a value-creating strategy, not simultaneously being implemented by any current or potential player. Now, what does that mean, value creation? Well, companies nowadays like to take a service dominant approach, and that means they look at everything through the value of experience and through the value of service. And by experience, we mean creating an experience and a journey for that customer, and that's how we create value for organizations. It's not merely about the product in the exchange. It's not that Starbucks pumpkin spice latte and the flavors in that. It's also the fact that your name is written on the cup. It's also the environment that you're sitting in. It's the whole experience of how that company creates value. And it's a value creating strategy that allows you to maintain some kind of competitive advantage, because you understand that the core principle to success is to create value for your customers. And if you're always at a high level of value creation, it means that your products are being sold. It means that you're thriving and succeeding. First mover, second mover, blue ocean. We talked about Facebook before. What about MySpace? MySpace was the first mover. They came into the market and opened a big social networking platform. Facebook looked at that, they perfected that, and then they were the second mover. And now that's the story. They moved into the market. There is no third mover. They might be one in a few years' time. You never know. But they are the second mover. And that's the theory of first mover, second mover. Now, first movers will have an advantage because they're the first person to take that piece of real estate in the market. The first person, let's say online degrees, the first person to sell online degrees, the first organization, they would have had a market share. No one else would have been doing online degrees. Now there are various companies that are organizing and working with affiliates to partner up and provide online degrees. They're second movers. They saw that first company had something going. They were selling degrees. People couldn't go to the campus. They had to study online. And so that was a niche in the market. They were getting all of the prospective customers until people realized, oh, wait a second. This is a big enough space for us all to live in. And that's what we called a blue ocean when there was a first mover in there, to a red ocean where there's lots and lots of people in the same market. And a blue ocean strategy comes from looking at the market, looking at where everyone is, and seeing whether you can occupy a different market space from your competitors and still be successful. How is this possible? Well, one word for you: Uber. There are loads of taxi firms. The whole traditional idea of taxis, of sticking out your hand and a taxi comes to you, or calling up for a cab, that used to be the way that we used to order taxis. But Uber planned it differently. It said, well, what if you linked your credit card to an account? What if you had an online app and there was no transaction in the exchange and someone would come and pick you up? They then moved as a first mover into a blue ocean where all the other cab companies are sitting in the red ocean competing with each other. What happens now? Lyft come along, and that ocean gets a bit redder than it was before. So the blue ocean strategy is the simultaneous pursuit of differentiation and low cost to open up a new market space and create new demand. It's about creating and capturing uncontested market space, thereby making the competition irrelevant. It's based on the view that market boundaries and industry structure are not a given and can be reconstructed by the actions and beliefs of industry players. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of second movers. If we look at China and the rise of how China have taken certain products or certain theories from the West and been able to port them over to be far more successful, you know, they're using second mover advantage. AliExpress, Alibaba are a great example of taking the Amazon model that does so well in the West and ramping it up for the Chinese market whilst creating some new and different strategies. And Amazon, well, they can't compete in China in the same way that AliExpress does. And that's how they created a blue ocean. Not easy. Strategies on trend. Well, we haven't talked about a few strategies at the moment that have come from, you know, the real rise of technological advancement. Strategies that a lot of you guys who work in computing, technology, marketing maybe are familiar with. Strategies on trend. And we have here, what should the team continue doing? We also have, what should the team start doing? And what should the team stop doing? And that's part of the agile and sprint process. Sprint and agile are two processes in organizations that are really thriving at the moment. And there's lots of people who are taking agile courses and doing these kind of 2-week sprint cycles. Very good if you want to develop something on the technical side. If you're looking to develop maybe a process or looking to develop a piece of software or a website or whatever, you can look at sprint or agile cycles, these really heavy periods of 2 to 6 weeks of heavy work, and then you come out of it. You review the sprint, you look at it as a team, and then you retrospectively look behind you and look at the progress that you've made. If you want to find out more, there's lots of material out there on being a Scrum Master. You might have heard this term, Scrum Master, and learning agile and sprint techniques. One of my favorite strategies, you could say it's on trend, but it's been around for ages, is Lean Sigma 6, which is a project management strategy. We don't have enough time to go into Lean Sigma 6 today, but it's certainly a project management strategy that's on trend. It's about removing waste from any process in the organization. It's taken from the production floor of Toshiba and ported into modern day business. And lean strategy is often a very good way to move forward. As a content development manager, I use a lean content strategy where I look to make a piece of content, a video or a photo, and make sure that it's used as much as possible. So it's not just out there once and wasted, but it's part of a more overall strategy. That's part of my lean content strategy here. So in conclusion to our short masterclass today, and thank you all for paying attention, what we're really looking to do is create an ecosystem. For any manager out there, you really need to understand that organizations need to develop a complementary portfolio of strategic management theories. These can be applied to ensure that your organization is healthy and competitive. Now, in light of all this rapid technological advancement, the rise of AI and the future of work, companies will have to continuously review and upgrade their toolbox based on the market conditions as well as the internal factors of their companies. So really, if you want to survive and thrive, it's really about continuously learning, reading up on theory, applying it to different problems and solutions at your workplace, discussing that and framing that with your fellow stakeholders at your organization, kind of understanding what works for you and being able to change that on a dime when something happens in the industry. So if you understand the 5 forces, if you understand the blue ocean, then you can see threats in the market and you can pivot and use the strategy that works for you. Now, if you're interested in learning more about strategic management theory, this is part of our series called Lessons from My MBA. If you missed the last lesson, our last lesson was looking at leadership styles. Now, if you really want to understand these theories in any kind of level or depth, you're going to have to do a master's degree or go and do something a bit more heavy than watching this webinar, obviously. Now, at Edology.com, we have fantastic affiliates who all provide online courses, such as the MBA, or maybe you prefer to do a MA in strategic digital marketing. You can see here on the Edology website that we have career paths, programs, as well as schools. So let's have a look at business and management. Here you can see the business and management that we have various affiliate programs that we're running. Here at the London School of Business and Finance, we have a global MBA. At Arden University, we have our MBA as well as other master's degrees from various affiliates and some lovely testimonials as well. If you'd like to understand what course is right for you, you could look at our course finder here. You can pick your education type, what's interesting to you from the drop-down menu here. Maybe I'm looking for a postgraduate degree. Let's pick a university here, University of Law Business School. And now I can see that I could do an MSc in strategic marketing, it's 12 months duration, an MBA, or I can actually specialize in my MBA, do one in entrepreneurship. It sounds very interesting. If you're looking at career paths and want to understand more how to go into business and management, you're still in the right place with Edology.com. We have some fantastic blogs and advice. Leaders are born and made. Are you a CEO in the making? Some fantastic stats here and things that you can read up about. I mean, we at Edology really believe that online education is the accelerant for your career. And many of us, we're working, we have children, we can't afford to go into campus and commit that kind of physical commitment to go in 3-4 times a week, sit there in class. An online degree really does offer you the option to move on and to work at the same time as you're studying. Now, thank you everyone for tuning into our strategy masterclass. We'd love to hear more from you. If you'd like to make a comment, if you're watching on Facebook, please make a comment below. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can see our details there in the description. And we hope that you'll attend our next leadership lesson masterclass in the new year. My name is Joe O'Brien. It's been Lessons for My MBA. Thank you very much for attending today. Thank you.